I wanted to go back to the issue of immigration reform, which all three of you have touched on. Dr. Furman and Dr. Holtz-Eakin, you wrote about it in your testimony more in depth. Not only can we look at the impact on population growth and what would happen if we were to really stop immigration, but I wanted you to comment also on the effects to the economy of restrictive immigration policies that have been proposed. So in Judiciary Committee, we just passed on a party line vote bills that would essentially criminalize all the undocumented immigrants in this country and seek to deport 11 million. Can you speak theoretically if that were to happen? And I think there's many people across the country on both sides of the aisle that don't believe it's possible or desirable to do that. But since the rhetoric is out there and the policies have continued to focus on that, can you comment on the economic impacts of those kinds of restrictive policies? And Dr. Furman, why don't we start with you, and then I'd like Dr. Holtz-Eakin as well.
Yeah. We're used to hearing businesses talk about what uncertainty does to their ability to invest and grow. The type of uncertainty that legislation like that would create for 11 million people already in our country would mean their ability to be in the right job, to get an education, to start a business, and to contribute to our economy would go down. So it wouldn't just harm them, it would hurt all of us and our economy overall.
What would happen to the dairy industry, for example, in this country?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of industries that are particularly dependent on those workers, and that would be one of them, a number of agricultural industries. And it would hurt our productivity growth and economy. So just from a pure economic perspective, I would be opposed to it. And then I think there's a broader human dimension that I'm not a special expert in.
Dr. Holtz-Eakin?
My think tank, the American Action Forum, actually did a study of what it would do if we deported all those here illegally, whether over a 20-year period or even quickly, 2 years. I forget the numbers, but it's an overwhelming federal budget expenditure. I mean, you have to hire 30,000 lawyers. I'm opposed to anything that hires 30,000 lawyers. Create 1,200 new administrative courts, detention facilities. You need to send people back to their country of origin. That takes buses and planes, and it costs like $300 billion. You get rid of about 5% of the labor force, so you have yourself a pretty good-sized recession. And other than that, it's a good idea.
Thank you. And can you speak to the effects on Social Security? And thank you for that study, by the way. It was very good. Can you speak to the effects on Social Security, something a lot of Americans don't think about, but you think about the billions of dollars that have gone into the Social Security Suspense Fund that are actually paying for our older Americans now who are in retirement. What would happen if we were to get rid of undocumented immigrants in terms of Social Security Fund and that suspense fund?
We would need to raise taxes or cut benefits to have the same solvency that we have today.
Did you want to add anything? Okay. The other question I wanted to go to on education, both of you have, actually all three of you have spoken about the need to invest in education. In Washington State, my home state, we actually looked at the job gap growth, or the job gap. In 2020, we would have a 60% job gap in our state with jobs that are available, but we're not graduating enough people to actually fill those jobs. Can you speak, Dr. Furman, to how you would address the inequality in education? And Dr. Holtz-Eakin, you called it in your testimony an embarrassingly persistent and worsening gap between our student performance and the student performance in the rest of the industrialized world. Do you want to speak to what some of the prescriptions might be for that?
Sure. It starts very young. We are relatively low in the OECD in terms of the fraction of our 3- and 4-year-olds that go to school. So having universal preschool to help put students on a more equal footing before they even get to K through 12. There's a number of improvements that we could make to K through 12 as well. And then after that, making college more accessible. It's a great investment for most people, but it's a risky investment. And if that investment doesn't pay off, making sure that people aren't saddled with all of the debt and costs of that investment.
Did you want to, I know you talked about school choice in your testimony. It's not an area that we necessarily agree on, but can you speak about apprenticeships and investment in training programs to actually bring people back into the workforce, as the chair had mentioned earlier? I would just stipulate, I think the larger, more durable
improvements will come from a K-12 system that functions better. There are some legacy issues for those who are in the workforce now, don't have the skills to find the jobs that are available. We have some examples of successful apprenticeship programs. So South Carolina, for example, stands out. We have some examples of successful community college programs, but we do not have what appears to be a playbook for doing a nationwide scale-up of these programs to be successful. And so that remains something that needs to be figured out.